Hit the recording light. There we go.
Yeah, there it goes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Disney Antiquities and Collectibles with the incomparable Matt McKim.
Is that?
Oh,
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys. Sorry we weren't able to bring you Tom Nabbe today. Technical difficulties.
Yeah. We tried and tried and tried. He tried and tried. We're rescheduling.
Rescheduling for next Sunday. We hope you guys show up. Our apologies. My dearest, sincerest apologies. But while we're here, everybody that wants to show up, if you guys are still here, open question form for Matt McKim.
Oh, and Vince.
Yeah. So be prepared. Whatever. Anything you've ever wanted to know from Matt along reasonable lines. This is a family show, everybody. It's a family show. So anything that you want to ask Matt, even regarding that map that's behind him that I have offered, whatever, my next born child.
I did that for Tom. So, yeah. 1958.
Yeah, but yeah, guys, if, we're sorry we couldn't.
I did that for Tom.
Yeah. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, so Tom's messaging us. He needs to solve this problem. We're gonna give him a call on his cell, and see if we can fix this and get it rescheduled. But everybody that's here, there's a few people here, and does anybody have a question for Matt McKim or anybody else? Does anybody else feel like joining us today?
Hello.
Everybody's saying hi. Everybody's talking, but yeah. Do you see the side on
yes.
yours, Matt? Do you see? Okay. And it's funny because like when Terry goes live, her names show up, and I was trying to figure out how to do that. I think everybody has to register. We have to register to do something like that.
Because I did notice it later when I looked after it was live.
Yeah.
And I saw names. Now I'm not seeing names. And just to let people know, so the last 2 times that I was on with Vince, I could not see this because I was working off of my phone. So now I'm on my desktop and it's a better setup, better camera, better mic. It's all better.
You guys can see how clear he looks. The picture on Matt is incredible. Mine is still kind of hazy and fuzzy, but okay. So both names are posted. Hi, Gustavo, Ted Hake, Mitch, David, my sister Vicky. Everybody's here. Sorry, guys, if you're tuning in a little bit late. Tom had some technical difficulties. We're going to reschedule for next Sunday. We're going to definitely try to get this figured out, but if you guys have any questions for the great Matt McKim, anything about his dad, anything about Disneyland, Disney World, France,
or the great Vince. You're asking what the topic is. It's open. It's an open topic.
Yeah, it
could be anything.
Open forum today, guys. Joel Christopher Payne. Joel, how you doing? How's everything going with the? Joel is trying to go down to Mexico on an expedition. So,
yeah.
You know what? Hey, Joel, do you want to come on and talk about your do you want to talk about your relationship to Abraham Lincoln? Matt and his dad are big Abraham Lincoln people. If you want to join us, I will send you an invitation right now. Because I know you would want to hear that, right, Maddie, about him and his link to Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So did you see you had that golden age Vaseline on the lens look? Someone says here.
I did. Derek, Vaseline on the lens look. Okay.
That's actually what I need to do to get rid of my wrinkles here. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to send an invitation because I want to hear.
So he cannot.
What's that?
I figure it says here, I can't see who the user is, but it says, can't today. I'm about to jump into meetings.
Oh, I can't. Oh, okay. He can't. But anyways, all right. So yeah, that's Joel. Joel's busy. Joel slammed. Anyways, okay. So, guys, did you know that Matt was part of the opening of Disneyland France? So,
Mm.
if you guys have questions about France, about you know what, and the funny thing is, I've never been to Orlando. That's
Yeah,
I gotta go. You know
you
what?
do.
Why don't we plan a trip? Because I would love a
Oh,
tour.
well, that would be
I
fun.
don't like. It seems so overwhelming to me
Yes.
to go there right now with all the. It just kind of over. You know, and I'm older, so overwhelming. I would need to figure out how to maybe you could show
Navigate.
me how to navigate the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When was the last
Well,
time you were there?
oh gosh. Actually, it was the first part of last year. Actually, I should let me back up. I was in Florida.
Okay.
Did not go to Orlando. I was in Tampa
Okay.
for a wedding. So,
Okay.
but prior to that, oh gosh, um, I was there, and I think it was after the pandemic, or maybe it was right before. No, it was after the pandemic, so I don't remember exactly what year it was, and touch
Okay.
bases with some old friends and everything. So I
Yeah.
was there only for, I think, 3 days
Did you
this
go
past trip.
so okay, all the different parks and what would I hear people say you need to be there 7 to 8 days. Is that recommended? Is that to see
Yes,
everything?
yes,
Okay.
'cause, really, and you've gotta have some rest time too. But, I mean, if you're gonna go to the water parks, that's like
Oh,
a half a day thing that you wanna kinda do, um, you know, depending on what time of year it is too, because sometimes they're closed during the winter period. But,
okay.
things like that, or you're gonna jump around a little bit because
Yeah.
you wanna go back for a nighttime show at Epcot or the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So you might start the day at the Magic Kingdom and then leave and then come back.
Okay.
Um, so you do have to plan things out, and depending on what your transportation is too. Are
Yeah.
you relying on their transportation, or are you driving? So
Do you need transportation or is it everything are there a lot of shuttles? Is there a lot
oh,
of
yeah. If you're
okay.
staying on property,
Uh-huh.
uh, there's transportation. So, unfortunately, there is not a monorail to every one of the parks. And I've not understood that completely. Um, I always said, like, when someone is building, homes in a location, and if it's of great size, they have to pay into the infrastructure. So
Yeah.
they have to pay for schools, roads, hospitals, fire department, whatever, depending on what size this
Yeah.
complex is. But I thought that's really the way that Disney should have done it too.
Yeah.
So if, say, Animal Kingdom, you're gonna build Animal Kingdom, they should have said, "Okay, you have to put into your budget for the expansion of the monorail,
Yeah.
and that's just part of your budget."
Yeah.
So, then afterwards, you kinda go, "Okay, so now it's $1,000,000, per linear foot," or whatever they said. I forget what it is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they should have planned that out before and just said, "Okay, corporate, we're putting this into our budget, you know,
Yeah.
buy off on it." But,
Yeah.
so now there's buses that go everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and, but again, that kinda clogs up the streets. So,
Yeah.
it works like clockwork. It's pretty amazing. They have
Really.
worked it out very well, but, they should have had a monorail system from
Well,
the start of every park.
and that's what you know what? I was looking forward to asking Tom that because Tom was in charge of the monorail system.
Mm,
When he moved
right,
from here over there, that was his baby. And
right.
I'm looking forward to asking him that because, that monorail system, why but I mean, again, the expansiveness of it, I'm sure a lot of it was added after the fact. But I mean, with all of Disney's technology, I'm sure they can fix that, right? At least I would hope.
They can, but it's gonna be expensive, So, they should have done it up front. It's
Yeah.
like when you're expanding the freeway, you do everything all at the same time, and you don't piecemeal it,
Yeah.
'cause it gets more expensive as time goes on too.
Yeah.
And you've already
Yeah.
got the people and the equipment there. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What was the most enjoyable place that you worked? Was it France? Was it Orlando? Was it Disneyland?
Oh, wow.
What was your best experience overall?
You know, it's like having children. They're all different and all unique and all loved.
But
Um,
everybody's got the one child that's their favorite. Don't.
so, I do have to say, Paris was very special. That was my first big project with Imagineering.
Yeah.
Um, the question someone had here was when did Disneyland Paris get built?
Oh yeah.
So we broke ground in 19, could have been as early as 80, 87, but definitely 88. And I remember I was over on a business trip and I took some photographs of them starting to move the earth around.
Really.
Um, and then we opened in April 11th or 12th. I always get that mixed up. 1992. So, and I was there for about 2 years. Some business trips before that, but it was pretty much 2 years. And I lived pretty close to the construction site. I went over with my dog, so I couldn't really have a big dog in an apartment building in downtown Paris. So I had a house with a yard out near the job site, not far. So I used to hear the fireworks when they were testing things out. I was that close, but that would have to be my most special, I would think.
Really.
And the interesting thing is, I mean, everybody talks about Tokyo Disney Sea, and I worked on that also.
Yeah.
Um, and that's fabulous. And it's because we were using Oriental Land Company's money for that.
Yeah.
So it was a bigger budget. But
Yeah.
I would have to say, uh, Disneyland Paris is one of the most beautiful parks we've built. Um, there are so many jewels around corners, little hidden things, and um, it's just a gorgeous park. It really is a gorgeous park. Amazing people working on it. And I gave 5 years of my life to that thing, and I came home early. My boss said, "Hey, I need you to start working on Second Gate France, so I'm sending you home early." So I wasn't there up to the very end, but with my own money, I flew back and I went in for opening day. I was there for opening day, and I'll tell you an interesting story. So uh, this will stick with me till the day I die. Uh-oh, Vince, you disappeared. Vince. Um, so I'll just tell the story, and you could pop back on, Vince. Um, I hopped on the plane after all of the opening. There you are. So after all the opening extravaganza,
Mhm.
um, from the Main Street train station, I hopped on board,
Uh-huh.
and I was by myself at that time. And I'm going through, and we go through the diorama, and I'm sitting with a French family. So it's a mother, father, son, and daughter. And I would
Yeah.
say the son was probably 12, maybe, and she was
Uh-huh.
probably 14, something like that,
Uh-huh.
fairly young.
Yeah.
And so we're going through the diorama, and their eyes are pretty big and everything. And if you've been to Paris, Disneyland Paris, as you come out of the diorama, um, you have Rivers of America, and you've got Big Thunder on an island in the middle. And so as we were coming out, you had the Mark Twain coming around with their steam coming out, and you had the screaming and the noise of Big Thunder going on. And behind that, you had, the treehouse, Swiss Family Robinson
Sir
treehouse.
Family Robinson.
But anyways, it's quite a setup, and it was beautifully set up. And when you come out of that tunnel, it is breathtaking. And I
Really.
looked at this French family that was sitting right next to me, and all of their eyes were just huge, and their mouths, all of them, were just open.
Agape.
Yeah, as they were looking at all of this for the first time. And this is the first Disney park in Europe, you know?
Yeah.
So I have to tell you, all of those 5 years of working hard on that project, that family made it worth my while. Just the expressions on their face. It
Yeah.
was Yeah.
Like seeing a
I
child the first time.
Yeah,
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 like when you see a child the very first time, you can almost say that you got to experience 1955 all over again
yeah, yeah.
because
You know,
all these
and
people.
it's all personal because
Yeah,
you've put so much into this thing, and, the long hours and literally the sweat
yeah,
out in the field,
yeah,
and the freezing mud, I at that time, I was doing rock work, and, so I was doing Fantasyland. I did the castle, and I did a lot of the dark rides and, restaurant, Pinocchio's restaurant and such, and, so we had these big generators that we were running the, cement mixers and such, and
yeah,
I wasn't mixing cement, I was art directing this stuff, but I'm there, I'm out there, I'm with my big boots standing in this frozen mud, and, we'd take our gloves off, and we'd put them on the exhaust pipe of these big generators that were, operating the mixers to
yeah,
warm our hands.
yeah.
And so then we'd take them off and put our hands back in these warm gloves, and it was, very comfortable. The only thing is when your nose was running, you'd take your glove off and you'd wipe your nose. You had diesel exhaust, that you were smelling. So, yeah.
Did when you were there, did you bring anything back that was just collectible? Anything that meant something to you? Was there anything that you brought back that was just special from each of these places, but especially France?
So are you talking about from the park itself, or are you talking
Yeah,
about
any,
just
yeah,
France, Paris?
yeah. Well, both.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm sure. I mean, there's a lot you brought back, but is there
Yeah.
something that holds special to you that you brought back from the park per se?
Um, I d I do have, and the thing is, it's so nondescript, you wouldn't know if you were looking at it. But, I was telling you the story the other day about, um so I'm working in rock work, but, one of these turrets that was going up had these vines that intertwine to
Yeah,
support the top of it, and, made out of fiberglass,
yeah.
and, they weren't looking so good. So I don't know who had bought it off, but when it got to the field, it's like, "Okay, we need to make these changes." So I was down in the grotto, the not the grotto, because that's where the dragon was. That was somebody else. I was down in the moat working on the rock work for the castle at that time, and I was doing some of the dark rides. But so here I was having to climb the scaffold to get out of the moat, then kinda walk along well, it wasn't grass, it was mud at that time, to go up to another set of scaffolding to go up to this turret, and I was working with these Italians, and I spoke French fairly well, but I didn't speak Italian, and it's close enough. I could understand what they were saying, but I couldn't really speak it,
Yeah.
and, I was making so many changes with a Sharpie up there. Grind this down, add here, move this, and day in and day out, and these poor Italians were getting sick and tired of me, and, but of course, they weren't listening to me as I was trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Hard with the language barrier. But anyways, they were ready to throw me off, the scaffold. I was
Yeah.
expecting that anytime. But, anyways, so I was working up there, and I ended up, um I found a piece of the turret, a piece of fiberglass. It's only like a 3 by 4-inch piece of pink painted fiberglass that came off of one of those pink turrets, and I just thought,
Yeah.
"You know what? I'm going back with a little piece of this because I gave so much going up and down multiple times per day, to get this thing right."
It's
So
something nobody else has. It's
nobody
something
else
nobody.
has, I would think, I don't know,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't know what it was if I handed it to you, you know?
But you know what? And I see people that do these things. You need to have it framed and
Yeah,
have writing or something and a picture
photograph.
of of the turret itself. And that would be cool because that would
Yeah,
be this piece that you could talk about.
I should
That would
do
be
that.
interesting.
I should do
Did
that.
you work on China? Did you work on Shanghai at all?
I did, I did. So, at that point, I was working in theme lighting.
Oh, okay.
I worked in multiple departments through the years,
Yeah.
and that was the last department, before my exit and retirement. I was in theme lighting. So it was
Okay.
all the fancy lighting.
Yeah.
And so I was helping out kind of multiple lands back in here in California. But when it came to being in the field, and they asked me to relocate, my boss had asked me to relocate, and I just said, you know what, I've relocated so many times, and at this point in my life, I really don't want to relocate. So they said, okay, fine. Would you take business trips? I said, business trips, I have no problem with. So I'd go over for usually about a month at a
Uh-huh.
time.
Yeah.
And, but here's the other part to all of this. They also gave me, because I wasn't literally full-time living there, right?
Yeah.
I had projects in Florida. So I would fly from California to Shanghai. I'd spend a couple of weeks, few weeks there. Then I'd fly back to California. I'd be home for a week or so. And then I'd fly to Florida for a couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks. Then I'd fly back to California. Then I would fly back to Shanghai. Then I'd fly back to California. And then this went on for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so and it would be kind of wacky because I would have to be responding to emails while I'm in Shanghai about Florida, or I'd have
Yeah.
to be looking at drawings to, review things,
Wow.
so I would be, working after hours or whatever, or sneaking something in at my lunch period just to eat at my desk and go through these drawings for the other park. And, uh, yeah, so what isn't there a song, if it's Thursday, it must be Belgium, or if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium, or something like that? I was almost at that point where I was like, "Okay, where am I?" Sometimes you'd
You were
wake up
looking
and
up.
go, "Am I at home? Am I in Shanghai, or am I Florida?" So, yeah.
How
But,
long did you do that?
I did that for about 2 years,
Wow.
something like that. Oh, so anyways, so for Shanghai, in the field,
Mhm.
and then there were times towards the end I was there for a couple of months or whatever,
Yeah.
um, and, living out of a hotel, though.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I ended up doing the entry and Mickey Avenue.
Oh, okay.
It was basically where I was putting most of my time, where I was assigned.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did I you you talk about the places you've worked. Did your dad, did he have a specific thing that he enjoyed that I never asked you that, I don't think. What was the one thing that he specifically enjoyed working on? I mean, I know he was real partial to Mr. Lincoln, but what was
Yes.
closest to his heart?
You know, the World's Fair, I would probably say that was probably the time period that he, uh, he enjoyed. I mean, it was hard work. There were extra hours, and I think I was telling you too that we've been finding papers where he was keeping track of his time.
Yeah.
So I can tell you down to the hour how much he spent on Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, what
Yeah.
days and how many hours.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a time period. The park wasn't even 10 years old yet
Yeah.
at that point, so it
Yeah.
was still pretty new and fresh. I mean,
Yeah.
Walt was updating things, but, here that, they took on the World's Fair, and they kept adding attractions,
Yeah.
pavilions, and so, there were a lot of Imagineers I was hearing about saying, "Oh my gosh, Walt, don't take another one on," but of course you wouldn't tell him that, but, so yeah, so for these large formatted CinemaScope paintings that my dad was doing for, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, he was producing a painting and a half every day. No, sorry, a painting every day and a half,
Wow.
which is, a lot of work. And it's, the researching and everything. Um, and he was working on Carousel of Progress and, Diorama, and, I haven't found anything, and I don't remember him actually talking about it other than the fact that he said he worked on Small World. So I don't know to what extent. I don't know
Yeah.
what it was. I haven't found anything yet. But, I didn't share the story about showing the paintings of Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln with Walt. Did I tell that story?
No,
Okay.
no.
So James Algar was a show producer and been with the company for some time at that point in the mid 60s. And he was the show producer on Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So
Uh-huh.
my dad was working very closely with him. So after all of these paintings were completed, uh, they were shown across from animation at the studio at the theater. And so my dad's sitting in one of the rows, and in front of him was Walt and Jim Algar.
Uh-huh.
And so they're going through all of these CinemaScope paintings showing Walt. And the lights come up, and Walt spins around and he slaps my dad in the knee and he says, "Great job, Samuel." And he gets up and he leaves. And Jim said, "I have to go talk to Walt, but I want to talk to you, Sam. So go up to my office. I'll meet you in a few minutes." And so when Jim comes into his office, my dad's there, and Jim says, "You know, Sam, I just want you to realize what you just got from Walt." He says, "I've been here at the company, and it was over 20 years. I forget how many years he said."
Yeah.
And he says, "I've gotten two of those type of compliments from Walt." He says, "You need to realize what you just got." And so, my dad was thrilled that he was happy, obviously, and he was very
Yeah.
proud of his work. But
Yeah.
that made that project even more special to my dad because of what
I was
Jimmy
going to
did.
say, because I've heard Floyd Norman say that he wasn't very forthcoming with his praise,
No,
that, that he was just very, subtle in everything that he did. So for your
right.
dad to get something that huge, he must have really, that must have just been the top,
Yeah.
to get that kind
Well,
of compliment.
and my dad said that, you knew when Walt was happy and you knew when he wasn't happy and when he
Yeah.
didn't like something.
Yeah.
So, um, he was always, as my dad said, and I'll tell you an experience here that my dad had. Um, he realized how much Walt really coddled his artists. He really appreciated them and took care of them. So, um, you would get compliments without it being blatant.
Yeah.
And when he wasn't happy and he wanted changes, he gently told you how that was gonna happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if your idea wasn't quite what he was thinking,
Yeah.
uh, he I don't know, you'd have to ask somebody who was around when he was giving these out, but I remember my dad saying, "You knew when things were good, and you knew when things weren't good." Um, um, I was gonna tell you a story though about uh, with Jim Algar, and now I don't
Really?
remember what I was gonna tell you. It'll come to me in a second, but I do remember my dad talking about Walt dropping into his office one day, and he was working on Rivers of America. And my dad was meticulous with his research, and he loved the American Indians.
Yeah.
And so he was showing Walt his artwork of these teepees, and my dad was explaining these are the Blackfeet, and this is how they decorated the teepees, and this means this, and that means that, and Walt said, "Samuel," he says, "what are these things hanging from the top of the teepees up here?" And my dad says, "Oh, yes, Walt, those are scalps. The Blackfeet used to scalp."
Yeah.
And Walt did the eyebrow thing, and he says, "Samuel, you gotta take those down." He says, "I'll get too many letters about that." So, I actually saw that piece of artwork in the archives, a few years ago,
Really?
and my dad those scalps are ghostly in there. He did remove them, but
Oh, did
you
he?
can barely see them. Yeah.
You can see them, they're still kinda made out a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I
So
was gonna say, that would be pretty neat for you guys to have the original still.
we
That would
don't have the
be
original. In fact, I don't even know if we have a copy of it. Um,
really?
but, when we get this book, because it's got a great story to go with it, that
Yeah,
image has gotta be in the book. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And for those that don't know, Matt is and his brother and sister-in-law, they're working on a book about Sam McKim, and we hope to see that in the near future. Believe me, when that starts, we are definitely going to let everybody know. We're going to be pushing this book like crazy because everybody needs to know about the great Sam McKim.
Well,
There's
thank
so
you.
much to it.
It's an interesting story, and not just with Disney, but Hollywood prior to
A
that.
life. It's a
Yeah,
life.
yeah, he
It truly is a life.
jammed a lot into that.
Oh,
And we're
for
finding
me,
all kinds of little treasures as we're going through boxes. We still haven't gone through everything yet.
really,
No.
because you said, I mean, there's got to be what? How many boxes total? Like,
We probably well, he brought home, I think it was 32 boxes when he retired. And
okay,
we've quickly gone through those boxes, but we haven't gone detail to detail.
fine tooth comb.
Right. And then we've got personal boxes. And but the interesting thing is, we're finding Disney stuff in those personal boxes also. So like
Yeah,
we found the original photographs that my dad took to set up the paintings for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So
yeah,
photographs of my uncle and my cousins and my brother as a young
yeah,
Abe Lincoln. And those were not in his retirement boxes. Those were in private boxes.
yeah.
So we still have a few of those to go through.
I was gonna say, does Disney Archives? I'm sure they have a lot of things that your father did. Do they ever come to you asking, do you have this, or can we see this, or do they ever come to you for any of that?
I have talked to Mike about the fact that, we do have some originals here, and if you guys want to make copies, if you don't have copies or whatever, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah,
Um, um, and it's kind of interesting too that my dad started in 1954, so this year is actually 70 years ago, coming up at
wow,
the end of the year, when he started.
yeah,
But and I think it was Big Mike that told me that, with all the moves that archives had made through the years, they would come across new stuff or new findings or a box they didn't know they had.
yeah,
And he said, we used to think that like Herbie was the most prolific, producing the most artwork for WED and
yeah.
WDI. And he says, it turns out your dad we have more Sam McKim stuff than we have anyone else.
Really,
And that was kind of amazing. And so
that's an
what
honor.
makes me kind of wonder, wow, that's impressive in itself, but now that we're finding some original art in some of these boxes,
Yeah.
then there's even more. You know what I mean?
Is there
So,
anything that you found that you didn't know your dad worked on, and maybe he worked on something a little bit that, you know,
uh, well, obviously and even my dad would tell you, he says, after so many years, and I, even my 25 years or whatever with Imagineering and such, that you start to lose track of all the little things that you've worked on.
yeah,
Um, so even he would forget some of the things that he worked on. Um, but I'm trying to think of things I didn't know that he worked on.
because he did, like you said, he did so much. I mean, he probably dabbled here and there. Because was he like you were loaned out to all the different departments? Was your dad used all over the place in different departments like that as well?
Oh, sure. And
Yeah,
and Walt was the best at orchestrating that. He would have my dad work on TV shows or movies and the like. He had requested my dad for Mary Poppins, and my dad didn't get the message. Somebody said, "Oh, Sam's busy on something else." And my dad found out afterwards, and he says, "You never tell Walt that. He knows what we're all working on. So if he
yeah,
wants you, then he knows that what you're working on can wait." You know what I
yeah,
mean? He
yeah,
knew everything. He knew
yeah,
everything that everyone was working on.
yeah,
So, but yeah, my dad worked on No Mobile, Nicky Wild Dog of the North, um, uh, Bon Voyage. Some of this stuff he didn't get credit for. I don't know
yeah,
for whatever reason, but
yeah,
and then actually, I did find a script um, that was. It looks like it was a TV movie that Roy E. Disney was involved with, and in fact, some of my dad's notes. It was kind of funny. because this was the 1960s.
Yeah.
Roy O was still alive, right? And
Yeah.
my dad knew both of them, but
Yeah.
my dad's notes would say Roy Jr. It wouldn't say Roy E, it said Roy Jr. So it was kind of funny to see that because it was a time period that it referenced, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's
Um,
that's kind of funny, you don't think of it that way. You think of Roy Jr., you think of, who we know from our time, not Roy
right,
E, you know?
right, exactly, exactly. So, but yeah, there was something that I've got the scripts here that my dad was working on. I don't know if I tried to look it up on IMDb and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if it actually came to fruition or not, if they
Yeah,
actually made it.
yeah.
But yeah, so
See,
there's some
yeah,
things I guess you'd say, oh, I didn't realize he worked that extensively or
yeah,
brainstorming this. I didn't realize maybe, for the World's
yeah.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, the '64 World's Fair. I was gonna say, your dad working there, all these people were just normal people to you, I'm sure. Exatencio and Herbie and all these people that you knew, they were just normal people to you, right? They were just, when you saw them, they
Yeah,
were
I
just
mean,
normal people.
they were my dad's colleagues, and then a lot of them became my friends too,
Yeah,
through the years.
as you
And
grew up.
I think I
Yeah,
told you, growing up that, I had my 5 favorite growing up that, to me, these individuals really talked to me and not down to me as an adult. And I liked that as a kid. They were truly interested in, who I was and what I was doing and what I was thinking. Which I think is a true Imagineer anyways,
yeah,
get into a kid's head. But, and we're gonna have, uh, uh, Pam Burns here on,
ye
Harriet Burns' daughter, and
yes,
Harriet was one of my 5 favorite. I just adored Harriet,
yeah.
and, she would get a kick out of hearing stories about Brian and myself and, the differences in our personalities and the like. She used to poke fun at me. Um, Brian was a little more well-behaved than I was. Um,
Wait, you got Matt McKim with mischievous? Hold on.
yes, yes, I guess you could say it maybe a little mischievous. In fact, Harriet loved telling this. You know what? I'll wait for that when Pam comes on. I'll
Yeah.
tell that little story because Harriet got a kick out of, telling me about my dad and her having a conversation about us. But, yeah. Should I tell the story about meeting somebody down at Disneyland with the, hand buzzer?
Yeah, I think that would be a good one. This one you guys will definitely appreciate because this is classic. This is the Matt that I know.
Okay, so when we would go to the park, as a family, being young and everything, I loved the magic shop, and I would, go in and either buy a magic trick or if I had saved my money enough, I would buy one of their masks. The masks were amazing, and I had a small little
Yeah.
collection here at the house. But, sometimes I would get uh, a gag instead of a magic trick. So this one year, and I think I was about 8 years old, something like that, 8 or 9, and, I bought one of those wind-up hand buzzers that, looped around your finger, and it went in the palm of your hand. So when you shook someone's hand, it went around and vibrated and made a noise, right? So called a hand buzzer, I think it was, something like that. So Brian and I, this was towards the end of the day. It was dark, and we're over near the Opera House, I think it was, near the train station, that area. And my parents were over by the Emporium, and I could see that they were talking to a gentleman. Um, and he was dressed up. I think he had a tie on and everything. So I figured, okay, he works there. So my dad waves us over and he says, "Brian, Matt, come over here. I want to introduce you to somebody." So, yeah, I I put my hand out and I shook his hand and it went off and he jumped back. He was kind of shocked at first and then he realized what it was and he started laughing. And so he left we said it was nice to meet you, whatever, and he left. And my dad turns to me and he says, "Thanks a lot, Matt." He says, "Your brother, I don't have to worry about. You, on the other hand, thanks a lot." He says, "You realize that's Dick Nunis. He's the president of Disneyland." So, I would see Dick either at WDI or wherever, and we'd say hello and chat and everything. And every time he would leave, I would think, "Oh, shoot, I should have asked him, 'Do you remember the first time we met and I buzzed you?'" But I would always forget. So, and now he's passed away and I can't ask him that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
I know he had to have remembered you though.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
How many kids buzz you their whole life, you know?
Well, here's the point. It's like, Dick, you gotta be
Oh.
happy because I spent money at your park, right?
Yeah, that was the long and the short of it, yeah. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. Oh, see, and those are
So,
the
yeah, I was
things,
a little mischievous, I guess.
your dad was so reserved. Your dad was so
Yeah.
reserved, and he just had this way about him, this elegance to him. You just, that's the Scottish in you, isn't it?
Oh, and the funny thing is, so there used to be a fair amount of tension between WDI and Dick. And
Mhm.
Dick wanted a little bit more control over the design, which was solely at WDI. So there was a little bit of tension, between them. And
Yeah.
but early on, my dad went down for a meeting at Disneyland. And so this would have been probably early 60s. I don't know if it was for a parade or what. My dad did a fair amount of brainstorming and design for parades. But anyways, he was going down to meet Dick this one day.
Uh-huh.
And so, maybe my dad had met him once before, but they didn't know each other that well.
Yeah.
And so my dad goes into the meeting and Dick says, "Well, before we get started," he says, "I have to tell you this, Sam." He says, "I got a phone call from Walt." And he says, "Listen, Sam McKim's coming down to have this meeting with you on whatever this project is." And
Yeah.
Walt says to Dick, he says, "Whatever Sam wants, you give it to him, Dick." And so Dick is telling my dad this story. And my dad thought, "Wow, he didn't have to tell me that." But, obviously left an impression on Dick. So
Yeah.
anyways, kind of from that day forward, my dad and Dick got along just fine.
Yeah.
And, there was mutual respect and such. And, there's some other stories too that,
He just needed
Dick did some very
reaffirmation, I
kind
guess.
things. Pardon?
Yeah. Dick just needed reaffirmation, I guess you could
Yeah,
say.
yeah, 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 yeah. So getting it directly from Walt, you give him what he wants. It's like,
I was
"Okay."
gonna say, yeah, Walt calls and says, "Give this man whatever he wants." You tend to kind of follow that, I think, you know?
Yeah, unless you want another phone call.
Yeah, unless you want a second one, which you didn't really want. But oh
Uh,
my gosh. Well, for those that are just joining us, guys, we're sorry we couldn't have the great Tom Nabbe on. We had
yeah,
some tough technical difficulties. We're gonna try to
but we
get him
will.
on again next Sunday. Next Sunday is
The 14th.
the 14th. Yes, thank you. How could I forget that? I'm going to hear about that, I'm sure. But yeah, so we'll
Somebody has a birthday,
somebody's got a birthday next Sunday. But yeah, so we'll
so we'll
definitely
have
try
to
to get him
celebrate
on.
for you too.
Yeah, we'll have to celebrate somehow. But
We'll each have cake for you.
yeah, everybody, if we do have the podcast next Sunday, please get a piece of cake, enjoy, share with us. But I wanted to just kind of let everybody know and have Matt share some stories, and I wanted to thank you guys all for showing up and being here. We're close to 6,000 members. Did you see
Wow.
that?
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
see
we're
that,
coming up on
59.
6,000. Yeah, we're 59 something, and a lot of that has to do. And I wanted to thank one of the admins, Debbie Weiss, who has done an incredible job. She's offering something
Thank
for
you, Debbie.
everybody. Um, for those that add friends and 5 friends, she's giving a $200 credit voucher at her gallery. So
Very
anybody
nice.
that gets a 200 credit, yeah. So she's really, really, boosting this, and we're seeing some great things in We were talking about, Matt and I were talking about a desk that we were looking at, and some furniture and things that are being posted. But it's really interesting. You were talking about some of the furniture from WED and the things that you were looking at. Did you manage to bring home some pieces too? Did you not, when you were working there? Or did you have any pieces that you could buy?
Um, yeah,
Did they
we
did they
had
sell
opportunities to
pieces
buy
to?
things. Pardon?
Yeah. No, I was just curious because they had like a yard sale where you guys could purchase furniture and things, right? From
Yeah,
them.
and I think
Yeah.
now, because I was inquiring about some flat files, to keep some of my
Yeah.
dad's stuff better organized, and, um,
Yeah.
and I know they were getting rid of stuff even when I was there, but, I was told most of that stuff ended up down at, property control down at Disneyland. So and then the monies for that, um, go to charity, which is
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I actually, when I was working on, Disneyland Paris, um, there was an area that was for mock-ups, and it was what we used to call the black duvetyned areas off, and, there was a Kem Weber, um, locker,
Yeah.
one of the darker woods, not the
Yeah.
lighter, but the darker woods.
Yeah.
And, that was sitting back there, and so I asked about it and said, "Is anyone using this or whatever?" And we had cubicles at that time, and they were short walls, and I think I was even sharing a phone with Ed Levins. I think we had one phone sitting on the top of the short little wall that we would share, and,
Yeah.
anyways, and this was in an old warehouse down around the corner from 1401.
Yeah.
But, anyways, people said, "No, no, no, we're not using that. Go ahead and use it." So I put it in my cubicle, and I would hang up my jackets and everything else, and it had a kind of a weird odor for a while, so I had to kind of spray it out and let it air out. But, anyway, so I'm getting ready to move to Paris, and I'm, gathering up all my stuff. They're putting my name on things, and I said, "Is there any way that I could put my name on this locker? Because 'Cause I'd like to get it back and use it
Yeah.
again when I come back."
Yeah.
And my boss said, um, he says, "Well, I can't guarantee it's gonna be here when you get back necessarily, even if we put your name on it." He says, "Matt, why don't you just take it home? You can have it. Take it home." And I looked at him and I said, um, "I'll take it home if you fill out the paperwork for me to legally take this home," you know?
Yeah.
So he did, and I've got it in my studio at my house. And, so
You've still
that's
got
kind of
it
a
to
neat
this
little
day.
piece. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I
See?
actually have, the drafting table that, WDI had sent over for my dad to use when he was doing the EDL map, the
Oh,
Euro
really?
Disneyland map, so
Yeah.
for Disneyland Paris. And that was, 91, 92.
Yeah.
And, my dad didn't need it anymore, and so that's I have it flat, but I have a very large table that I work off of, um, at my studio at my house. So,
Yeah. That's
yeah, and that
cool.
was from there. Yeah.
Um, Danny says hi. Danny DeMeyer.
Hey, Denny.
But Robbie Von Roll has a story, or he's got a question. Um,
Yes.
Robbie says, been doing some research through Disney archives. Can't find any information who did the designing of the Fantasyland Skyway Chalet. Any clue, Matt?
Oh. Yeah, what's funny, I seem to remember one piece of art that my dad did, and I can't remember if it was purely pencil or if it was a color piece,
Uh huh.
but I also wanna say, um ooh, sorry about that.
No worries. Do your thing.
Um
I get it.
Um,
Duty
no,
calls.
this is my mom's phone, so oh,
We still have lives, everybody. We still gotta
right.
answer phones and answer the door and see who's there, even in the middle of a podcast.
I think it
But
was a sales
Danny,
call, so I just hung up. Anyways, um, uh, I seem to also remember, I don't know why, 2 people are jumping into my head right now. One is Herb Ryman.
okay,
Um, I seem to remember him doing a piece on that, and I don't know why I wanna say John Hench. So, um, I'd have to see the actual artwork too,
Yeah.
um, to be able to tell you.
That
And the
would be
funny thing is my
interesting.
dad and Herbie actually shared an office for a while. And so my dad, they became good friends, closer
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And, because there was an age difference, my dad kinda thought of him as a mentor.
Yeah.
And, so what's kind of interesting is actually there've been some things that I've caught myself and said, "Oh, wait, no, that's Herbie's," or, "No, wait, that's my dad's." There's some brush strokes that are kinda similar.
Similar?
So I don't know if my dad was picking up some stuff from Herbie or not,
Yeah.
but, and as I was telling you about my 5 favorite people growing up, so there was Harriet Burns, and Herbie was also one of my favorites. And
Really?
I loved Herbie, not only for his artwork, but just he was just a wonderful man.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll tell you the other 3 now too, since I've started that.
Please do.
So, Leota Toombs,
Okay.
was just a dear, sweet person that would just talk to me and not down to me.
Yeah.
And Alice Davis, uh, just they didn't have any children, so I think as we were growing up, we were part of the kids that they really enjoyed being around.
Yeah.
Um, Alice was a sweetheart. And the 5th person was the last person to be hired by Walt himself at WED, and that's George McGinnis. And,
Oh.
uh, I George and I hit it off, and, I remember he hadn't seen me for a little while, and, I was this stocky little guy, growing up, and then as I was getting older, I thinned out and grew up,
Uh-huh.
and, so he hadn't seen me for a while, and he goes and George was this kinda stocky kinda guy too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember George saying to me, "Oh my gosh, what happened to the little stocky Matt I knew?" You know? So I thought it was kinda funny. But but those were the 5 favorite for me that they just and Harriet Burns that, talked to me
Yeah.
and really were interested in what I was doing, you know?
They felt like you were just somebody that they could deal with and talk with and
Yeah.
kind of haven't
Yeah.
yeah, normal. There've been people, I'm sure each of us have had somebody like that in our lives, but
Or a
yours
teacher.
just happen
Yeah.
to be famous people, I mean, Disney
Yeah.
famous people.
And I didn't think of them that way necessarily,
No,
though,
no.
with Leota, the first time I met her, I was probably 6 years old, something like that, and, my mom had fixed up a little picnic lunch for us, and we were just down the street from WED, and, we had our lunch, and I was on the swing set, and I see my folks talking to this lady, and my dad calls me over, and he introduces me to Leota.
Uh-huh.
And, he had said, "And this is the lady whose head is in the crystal ball in the Haunted Mansion." And so I'm shaking her hand, and I'm kinda looking at her, and I
You were
remember I'm like
staring,
6 years
weren't
old,
you?
right? No, no, I was enthralled.
Okay.
And so, um, we chatted a little bit, and then she left, and I turned to my dad, and I said, "Okay, Dad, who was that lady?" And and he says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "That's Leota Toombs, my dear friend, works in the model shop." And I said, "Okay, Dad, that is not the lady whose head is in the crystal ball." I said, "This lady's got black hair, and that lady's got white hair."
Right here.
And so my dad had to explain to this little six-year-old, that that was a wig and that was. So that was
That's
the first
funny.
time I met her. I thought that was pretty cool that she was the
Yeah.
head in the crystal ball,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
yeah. But this was my
Y
dad's friend, so
yeah. That you talking about, I didn't know that your dad and Herbie had an office together for a while. Did
yes.
they ever did so with us being map guys and Danny and a few others that are here being map guys, um, did he ever talk to him about the map that weekend that him and Walt spent together? Did they ever discuss it? Did you
Oh,
ever ask him about it? Did you guys ever have any conversations like that?
um, I remember being at talks when he was talking about it, um, but, um, So so Herbie was a jokester.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
he was just he loved to tell stories. He loved to
Uh-huh.
embellish them,
Yes.
and he was a wonderful storyteller, and and he was a jokester, and anyways, he would usually wait till the very last minute to finish his paintings.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember actually he was working on EDL Disneyland Paris,
Yeah.
and I found it interesting. So we were working in this building that was mostly a warehouse, but
Uh-huh.
he had a good size office, but there were no windows. And I found that really strange for an artist to be in an office that didn't have windows.
Yeah.
But anyways, I his door was open, and I just decided to say hello. It might have been like lunchtime or something like that. And his office was really dark. The lights had been turned off, and it was just like a light near where his table was. And when you walked in, it was you could see his painting he was working on in the back of his head, right, within his
Yeah.
chair. And as I walked in, I said, "Hi, Herbie." And then I realized, holy smokes, I just woke him up, and he was asleep in his chair. And he says, "Oh, hi, Matt." He says, I'm just studying this painting." He says, "I really don't like it." And it was this gorgeous painting. I don't remember exactly. It was obviously Paris, Disneyland Paris,
Yeah.
and it was gorgeous. It was a Herbie painting,
Yeah.
and he was just kind of funny. And I said, I guess I was comfortable enough with him. I said, "Hey, Herbie, I am sorry I woke you up." "No, no, no. I was just concentrating on this painting." I said, "Listen, Herbie, I'll shut the door, take a nap, whatever." But Herbie used to give my dad a hard time in a playful way. But he
Yeah.
used to say, "Sam, how come you take these really, really bad jobs?" He says, "Nobody wants these jobs and you take them." He says, "You got to ask for better jobs, Sam." And my dad says, "Well, you can't have great ones every time." He says, I take them, I learn something from it, and I do my best and I move on.
Yeah.
But Herbie was a jokester, and I, I guess I could tell this story because both of those guys are gone now. This was Herbie, and so the WED building, the front of 1401, second floor, the first floor was called the Gold Coast, and that's where all the executives were.
Yeah.
Up above that, and some of them had little balconies, but nice windows out the front, and that's where the artists were. So
Yeah.
my dad had an office there, and um, you'd have a door that you could close and lock, but above it, uh, they would be solid walls, but then there would be glass, like windows. So that was allowing light to be, moving around multiple rooms.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, Herbie came in one day with a shoebox,
Uh-huh.
and um, he was going to have a little fun with his buddy Walt Paraguay, who was another artist up there.
Yeah.
And Walt Paraguay could be a little on the feisty side too, so it was kind of funny to see that these two were having some fun. But anyways, Herbie comes in with this shoebox, and he goes into Walt Paraguay's office early in the morning before Walt
Uh-huh.
had got in, and he puts the shoebox on top of um, a shelving unit up near the ventilation, right?
Yeah.
Well, what was in the box was dog droppings, and so Walt Paraguay would come into his office, and he'd start sniffing. He's looking around, he's looking on the floor, and then he'd look on the bottom of his feet and be looking around, and he's sniffing and he can't figure this out. And then the next day, he comes in and, man, the smell is still here. And he's looking at the bottom of his feet and he can't figure this out, and there's nothing on the floor. Well, he's at his desk, and the story goes, he's at his desk and he looks up and he sees this shoebox up on top of the shelving unit
Yeah.
that he didn't put there, and he doesn't recognize it. So he reaches up, he pulls it down, and he finds the dog droppings. And he takes this into Herbie's office and he says, "Okay, Herbie, what's up with this?" And Herbie's, I don't know what you're talking about. What's in the box?" And Walt says, "I know it's you, Herbie. I know it's you." But anyways, this was Herbie, and what Herbie would do is have fun at work, and too funny.
I heard a story about him, and the same thing. It was Walt walked into his office, and
Ah,
Herbie was dead asleep, dead
okay.
asleep, and Walt's sitting there, and he hears him snoring, and his back
Uh-oh.
is turned to him, and he goes, "Herbie," and Herbie kind of jolted a little bit, and he turned and he made the sign of the cross, and he said, "Walt, you disturbed my prayer time." And
Oh,
Walt, I guess Walt's words were something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll let you get back to it," and he walked out.
I hadn't heard that, but I can see Herbie doing that, you know?
I always wondered about that because I heard that a few years ago, and I went, "God, somebody has to know this story," you know? Like I could just
Oh
picture him
my
making the
gosh.
sign of the cross. Oh my
I don't know what
goodness.
year this was, but Herbie got laid off,
Uh-huh.
and John Hench had told him, "We don't need you at this point. You're going to have to leave." And
Yeah.
Herbie and John, there was some tension between those two,
Yeah. They butted
and
heads.
I don't know exactly why or what, but anyways, my dad. This was fairly early on, I guess, and my dad was thinking, "Holy smokes, they're getting rid of Herbie and they're keeping me." And so, anyways, he says goodbye to Herbie and everything, and he leaves. And this is like on a Friday, right?
Uh-huh.
And Monday morning rolls around, and Herbie shows up at work. And my dad's all excited, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, Herbie, this is great! They brought you back."
Yeah.
And Herb says, "Well, not actually." He says, "I'm just going to come in every morning for this week and make John Hench wonder what's going on." He only came in for that one morning. He didn't do the whole week, my dad said, but that was Herbie. Herbie just, I mean, full of
He loved the
life and
joke.
just,
Yeah.
you know.
I was, I was gonna say, I wonder if John Hench saw him. I wonder if he went, "Did
Oh,
somebody go around me?"
I'm sure he saw him. I'm sure that Herbie made sure that he saw him, and he probably saw him a couple of times, probably walking to get coffee and going to the bathroom and whatever.
Can you
Oh,
imagine? Here you just laid somebody off and they're back here. You start
yeah.
wondering, did I get fired?
Well, I'm sure that John went back into his office and called HR and said, "Excuse me, didn't we lay off Herbie?"
No, it was you, John.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
goodness. Oh, well, my friend, that hour flew by, and I love your stories. I could listen to them all day. You guys don't know this, but a lot of times me and Matt are talking late, and I end up keeping him on the phone for 2.5 hours because I'm constantly just bugging him for more stories, and it's the best. I go
Well,
to bed laughing all the time. It's just so funny.
Vince, you've got some good ones yourself, so don't underestimate yourself.
But anyways, Maddie, thank you. I appreciate your time, and hopefully next
Yes.
Sunday we can get together with Tom for it'll be my birthday. So hopefully.
Yeah,
But thank you,
absolutely.
Maddie. I
We will
appreciate
celebrate.
it. And the rest
I
of you have a go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna respond to, somebody, and I can't see names, I'm sorry about that,
Okay, let me
but
see.
someone had said, "Nice to see Matt in his dad's office." And
Oh,
actually, this is not my dad's office. This is my mom's office right now, actually. This was my old bedroom. Brian and I shared a bedroom for a while before we added on to the house, and then that was Brian's. But so yeah, this is where the computer is. It's not my dad's studio, but maybe at some point, maybe we should share a little bit of that at some point.
maybe. You know
Yeah.
what? Me and Danny were talking about that. It'd be fun to do a podcast maybe from the office and certain things. And again, there's things that can't be shown, and because the book, everything that's coming with
Yeah.
the book. So,
We're
I
gonna
mean,
keep it a little
we want to
quiet,
kind
some
of
of this stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but there's things in there that I would love for people to see if at all possible, and to
Sure.
be able to talk to your brother as well.
Yeah.
Both of you together, and that would be a
We'll
lot of
do
fun.
that.
Yeah, we
We'll do
definitely
that.
will. But thank you for your time, Maddie. I appreciate it as always.
Yes.
And again, you being my co-host, thank you. That's the
Well,
greatest thing to me in the world. So,
well, thank you.
everybody,
I'm comfortable with you, Vince, and I think you're the perfect co-host. So
I
I'm
hope
happy to
so.
be here.
Good. All right, everybody. Well, happy Sunday. We will try to join you again next Sunday, but if not, we do still have some amazing guests coming up in the future, and we will be letting you know more about that. So, Matt, thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Uh,
you, Vince, and thank everyone else. And I'll do a little research on that chalet and see if I can find out a little more information on that.
okay. Robbie, you got that? More research. But again, everybody have a great week, and we will talk to you hopefully next Sunday. Ciao,
Sounds
everybody.
good.
Bye
On
bye.
somebody's birthday.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, my goodness. That